Listener-supported St. Gabriel Catholic Radio AM 820 brings you Family Sanctuary, a show that inspires living the gospel message in word and deed within our families. And now, Family Sanctuary with host Peggy Hartshorn.
Welcome to our program, Family Sanctuary, focusing on life-giving relationships in the family. I'm your host, Peggy Hartshorn, chairman of the board of Heartbeat International, that advances life-affirming pregnancy help around the world. And as you know, the Family Sanctuary focuses on many pro-life issues. Of course, everything having to do with the family is pro-life, right? That's God's plan. And so we've got a particularly important program today because, and it's a topic that doesn't get a lot of attention, and that's the area of infertility. So many couples are facing infertility. If I'm not mistaken, 1 out of 4 couples, or 1 out of 5, actually has an infertility issue. And some of that is a female infertility, some is male infertility. But what we often don't hear is how that really affects the feelings of the people involved, and how then that affects their relationship and the whole dynamic of the family. And it's a very, very difficult issue, and many people don't like to talk about it, that's for sure. But we have a wonderful guest this morning who not only has experienced infertility, but is very willing to share, and the Lord has really moved her and her husband to make this a real ministry. So we welcome Dr. Kimberly Henkel to the program today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you, Kimberly. Well, Kimberly is the co-founder of Springs in the Desert now, as a result of her experience of infertility. It's a ministry dedicated to spiritually and emotionally supporting those who are struggling with infertility and loss. So as with so many things, the suffering that we go through, the Lord uses to really not only allow us to come to healing, but also help others as well. And it's a beautiful part of Kimberly's story, and I'm eager for her to share it. Kimberly is also founder of a new initiative called Springs of Love, which is a ministry to encourage, educate, and equip Catholics to discern and live out the call to foster and adopt, which, as you might have guessed, is part of Kimberly's story of how God provided healing and hope. And new fruitfulness that was through fostering and adoption. And in the programs that Kimberly has founded, she brings a wealth of not only personal experience, but also understanding of our Catholic faith and of what the Church teaches on these important issues. She holds a PhD in moral theology and ethics with a focus on bioethics from the Catholic University of America, and she also has a master's degree in theology from the John Paul II Institute. So it's wonderful to see that combination of expertise in helping understand what our Church teaches about these issues, as well as her personal experience. So again, welcome, Kimberly.
Well, thank you so much.
It's great to have you on the program. So we're going to focus this program, and in fact, we've planned another program with Kimberly. So if you've enjoyed her story, look on the archives for the second program that we're also focusing on issues of healing within the family. But today we're going to talk primarily about her personal story. First of all, the surprise and disappointment in understanding and realizing she had an infertility problem, the feelings of isolation and kind of abandonment, and need for companionship, in that journey. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the new path that God opened up to her. So let's start, Kimberly, with well, how did you, if I recall your story, you were married somewhat later in life, and just expected, of course, that you would be able to have a family in I guess you'd say the way that often occurs.
Right, exactly.
But not always for couples, as we just mentioned.
Right.
So tell us about that. And
Sure.
and how did you feel when you realized that you had an infertility problem?
Sure. So my husband and I met in grad school at the JP2 Institute for studies on marriage and family.
Yay.
So we were hoping that we were just going to rock that vision of the Catholic family out. We were going to just...
You were going to be that example.
Yes. We were so, we were doing everything right. Mm-hmm. We just thought God's going to bless us and give us lots of children. And my husband had really devoted his life to working for the church. I had gone and gotten I was actually in the midst of getting my doctorate when we got married. I was giving talks about the problems of artificial reproductive technologies. So I was that was sort of a niche, that was sort of an interest of mine.
Mm-hmm. And you knew that wasn't God's plan for couples, artificial technologies.
And so many people they don't understand it.
Right.
And they feel like the church... should be allowing this, that church is just, anti-science, and which is...
And we're talking about things like in vitro fertilization and all the kind of unnatural means of conceiving children, which often results in aborting some of the embryos after they've been implanted, or...
it can.
Sure. Right. There's so many problems with that. So you knew that was not going to be a path.
Certainly, right. And, just going on and, we went to the John Paul II. So it's all about theology of the body and the beauty of God's design for sexuality. So when we got married, now I had it's funny, I became Catholic just a couple years. Like I became Catholic the year that I started at the JP2 Institute, which is kind of... a little crazy, but I was so excited about my newfound faith that I just wanted to learn everything. So I started with a master's in theology. That's a good place to go. And so then, we met and ended up getting married. And his brothers have lots of children. And, we were just kind of hoping that was going to be our story.
Or expecting.
Yeah, I speak about how every child is a gift. So we can't, expect a child, but, the child is always a gift.
Right.
So we understood that, but it was very surprising to find out that we could not conceive. Month after month, it was just like that renewed sense of grief every single month, and I can't even say how many pregnancy tests I bought. Just always like checking. Well, maybe, I feel a little off. Oh, maybe this is the month. I think I feel a little nauseous, and just like hyper vigilant almost with, what am I feeling? Is it possible that I'm pregnant? And continuously, it was just always a negative. So that was very discouraging. It was very hard on our marriage because I think that we had such expectations that, I said, the child is a gift, which absolutely, but there was this expectation that it would not just be the two of us,
right.
That there would be some more.
We'd at least get one gift.
I know. And so that put a lot of pressure on the marriage, I think, and a strain, and I think also with, God, where are you? Why are you not blessing us? We did everything right. Like here I've had this big conversion. I've given my life to you, and my husband has as well. And we're doing all the things, like why we're following your way.
Sure.
Why are we not getting pregnant?
Yeah. And did you go through some infertility studies at that point?
Well, yes. So
because that's another
definitely
very stressful journey. I've heard so many couples sharing on that, the testing and the...
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
It was. And so we did the NAPRO technology, which is a gift, of course, to really be able to understand our bodies and what's going on. We did all the testing and then different hormonal supplementation and injections and, the path. But a lot of that, can cause a lot of emotional, I guess...
Turmoil,
yes. Really. And
of course, you're still, as you expressed earlier, every time when your monthly cycle comes around, you're hoping and praying and hypervigilant, as you say, maybe this time.
Right.
As you go through those kinds of infertility treatments, it's very, very stressful, I know.
Definitely. And then I think another major aspect of the pain and suffering was just the isolation. I felt like I was the only person in my church that was struggling with this. We had, a lot of people in our parish got married very young. We had moved from Washington, D.C., where people don't get married until their late 30s or 40s. And here we moved to this sweet little town, Mount Vernon, Ohio. And a lot of the couples, they got married in their early 20s and were able to have, large families. And so I just felt like I don't know who to hang out with. So like most of my friends became those whose children were empty nesters. Their children had already left home. Because I just felt like I couldn't really relate to the couples with children because so much of their lives just kind of revolved around their children.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was another aspect of just feeling, we don't really belong and just feeling like we didn't belong.
So I think if I recall your story, God sent you, was it to a conference where you met an old friend who was also going through the same issues?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
God's plan again.
Absolutely. I mean, I reconnected with a friend from grad school who'd also gone to the JP2 Institute, and she herself, I was just talking with her at dinner, and I said, we've had a kind of a rough time. We've just been struggling with infertility. And she said, you too? She's like, she had not told anybody. She was so private about her suffering, which is very frequently the case, is that people don't want to share how much they're suffering. And they don't let on how difficult it is when people come up to them and they're like, so when are you guys going to start a family? So what's happening? What's going on? And I mean, Anne even had people say to her once she started talking a little bit more about it, so which one of you is the problem?
Goodness.
And so, that was, very sad sometimes,
often caring people say the wrong thing. Isn't it amazing how often we do that?
Yes, and I do too. So I have grace, there's lots of grace for all of those things. But
I've learned particularly that's happened so often when someone has died and you're trying to relieve that suffering. And always the best thing to say for those listening who may know someone who is also suffering from infertility, the best thing to say is, I'm sorry for how much you're suffering.
Yes.
I'm sorry for your loss, they say.
Yes.
It is a very good thing to say when someone has died. And it sounds to me like in the case of knowing someone is suffering from infertility, saying, I'm so sorry you're suffering from that. I'm so sorry. And again, it shows empathy for that feeling that you're experiencing. That's really the best thing that people can say.
Right. Or, I love you.
I'll be praying for you. Yes, absolutely.
And, and I'll get to it in a few minutes, but speaking about our ministry, Springs in the Desert is a great way to sort of say, there's this ministry that has started.
Now there's some help.
Yeah, there's something, because there wasn't at the time when I was going through this.
Right.
So anyway, Anne and I started talking, and we ended up writing we were invited to write an academic article about infertility and the suffering. And at the end of it, we realized, we need to start something, because both of us just felt like, where is the church on this? The church is our mother. Like, where is the church mothering us, through our grief? So this is how we started Springs in the Desert.
That's wonderful. So, and you must have started Springs in the Desert then, according to your story here, before God provided other paths for that fruitfulness for you. Is that correct?
Actually, we started talking about Springs in the Desert years earlier than we actually launched it.
You knew it was needed.
Yes, yes. But no, at this point, actually, we had actually already adopted our triplets, they're triplets.
Tell us about that story. So how did God open this new path to you?
Yes, it was just...
Were you pursuing adoption? At that point, did you decide that this is the path that we need to follow, or that we want to follow, God wants us to follow?
Well, I had determined that, but my husband hadn't yet. And so, and that's kind of a common experience. He was like, let's just keep trying. Let's keep trying. And I was like...
As you're going through the infertility treatment. Let me reintroduce you, Kimberly, in case someone has just joined our program. program. Our guest today is Dr. Kimberly Henkel. She's the co-founder of Springs in the Desert, a ministry dedicated to spiritually and emotionally accompanying those struggling with infertility and loss. And she also has phenomenal academic credentials, PhD in moral theology with a focus on bioethics from Catholic University of America, a master's in theology from John Paul II Institute. So she brings her heartfelt, personal experience to this ministry, as well as a phenomenal understanding of the church's teachings and the beauty of our faith into this whole arena. So anyway, we're talking about, we've talked about, she's given a powerful testimony of the suffering and loneliness that accompanies understanding that you are infertile. Or that you and your husband are infertile, and then struggling with the loneliness and the need for accompaniment there, which has not been up until very recently available in our church in a real accessible way. And now we're focusing in on how God opened the path of fruitfulness to Kimberly and her husband. So tell us about this open door to adopting triplets. Did you say?
Well, they're almost triplets. So,
okay.
So yeah, we started, my husband was a little bit more hesitant, but so I said, well, let's just kind of research, and so we looked into a lot of different things: international, domestic, public, private, attorneys, agencies. I mean, it's
right.
it's mind-boggling, really.
Yes.
But we settled on, let's just take baby steps and start with foster care. Mm-hmm. These are children in our community that are in need of parents. Mm-hmm. So let's start there. So we started out that path, and I mean, it was a lot bumpier than that, actually, I should say. We did try other things, and doors were closing. So mm-hmm. so we started out the foster care path, and it was really surprising. I think we enjoyed the classes. We did not expect that we would enjoy them. A lot of good, we just felt like there was a lot of really good parenting skills that we learned, and good. A lot of people of faith, Christians teaching classes that were, very much in line with, our view.
This was not a religious agency
it was
you
through
were
the
dealing
state.
with. Through the state. Okay,
and
wonderful. That's
we were
great.
very impressed with our classes. We suddenly, our minds were just expanded so much to see the needs of the children, mm-hmm. to see the needs of the birth families, to really just see how we could actually really make a difference in the lives of so many people, so many children, and their families as well. There's so many hurting families out there.
Sure. And
people who just, are coming from all sorts of trauma and abuse, addiction, just unhealthy families, mm-hmm. and they don't know how to parent, mm-hmm. and they're just overwhelmed. Sure. And so they end up in the system. And, it can be obviously devastating to a child to be just kind of taken from home to home to home.
Right.
So yeah, we started out that path, and they knew, because we had never parented before, they really wanted to match us with an infant, mm-hmm, and mm-hmm. we said we actually said we'd be open to taking all ages. We said that, but they were like, you have no parent. I was like, we'll take a sibling group. We'll take 4 kids. We'll take them.
Luckily, someone was smarter than you to start out, right?
Yes, I tend to be pretty intense.
Just jump in with both hands
exactly,
and both feet.
Right? I mean, I was like, I'm going to get a doctorate in theology. I just finished RCIA and became Catholic. So
you did say you decided to take baby steps, and that was not like you. Usually you were taking the giant steps.
Well, I have a husband who is a much slower, and
we see how God puts opposites together for some wonderful reason, isn't it?
That's very true. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I know. I mean, we never got that call. Our caseworker was like, I am only approving you for 2 children. I was like, what? Only 2? But we'll take 3. How about 3? I was negotiating with her. She's like, no, I'm not putting you down for 3 children. So after, actually, it took a couple of years for us to be called. Uh-huh. And we got the phone call, and they said, we have a little baby boy. He's about to be born in a few days. Do you want him? We're just like, oh my gosh. And my husband's like, I don't know. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? You don't know? Yes. They were like, you have 1 hour to decide.
Oh, dear.
1 hour.
Oh.
And my husband's like, I don't know. What if he goes back? This is going to be too hard.
Yeah.
I was like, no, we are saying yes. Let's say yes. And so then he took the leap of faith and said yes. And so then we brought our little sweet son home. And it was a surprising story that, I mean, really, we got to adopt him very quickly.
Wow.
And so that was really, and that was, again, a little bit of a roller coaster because it was sort of not exactly certain that was going to happen.
And of course, you had to be prepared, or thought you were probably prepared, if that child was placed back in the birth family. Well, you thought maybe, but that would have been so difficult for your first.
Oh, it would
if that would have happened.
It would have. But I'll tell you, I just was like trusting in God. And, and the moment I brought that sweet baby home, I held him in my arms and I was rocking him, and I was overwhelmed with this sense of grace and the sense that this child was truly God's child. I was like, I'm taking care of God's baby. And it was like, it was remarkable. And I was just so grateful that he was with me rather than his birth mother, who was not going to be able to care for him the way that I could at that moment. Yeah. So even if he were to go back, I became actually grateful just for every moment I had with him. And just that sense of, I'm just going to love him exactly how he needs to be loved. I'm going to bond with him.
For the time that we have him.
For as much, for as long, because every child belongs to God.
Sure.
Every child, he can take any of our children at any moment. They're his.
Well, I'm just thinking, Kimberly, because of course, this is leading to your founding of Springs in the Desert to accompany people struggling with this. And then now your new ministry, Springs of Love, to help people who are discerning whether they should foster to adopt or adopt. All of this experience, I'm sure your insights are so valuable to couples struggling with this. Well, tell me, how did the other two children then, because we've only got a few more minutes,
Sure.
I want to know how did you end up with the 3 and now you have 4?
I know, it's remarkable. That's God. But I was actually giving a talk about how every child is a gift at my parish. And my husband, literally the night before, was like, I think it's time for us to adopt again. And so that day I was at, I was getting ready to give a talk, and I ran into this old friend of mine, an acquaintance. We weren't very close, but I really, enjoyed her. And I said, how are you? And she said, oh, I'm getting ready to get custody of my twin granddaughters, and I need to find somebody to adopt them.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, we will take them. I said, we'll take them. And she's like, well, I have quite a few people interested. And I was like, can I come meet them tomorrow? Can I come? She's like, okay. So I gave my talk, and at the end of the talk, she came up to me and she's like, those girls belong with you. Because I was talking about how every child is a gift. So then I had to tell my husband. I was like, so guess what?
I'm just trying to fulfill your wish and desire that you expressed last night. I'm bringing home 2.
I said, we're getting twins. And he goes, no, not twins. Just one. I'm like, no, twins. He was like, no, just one. So then he met them and obviously fell completely in love with them. And
yeah, so you had your little boy and your twin daughters.
Yeah, so they're just 5 months apart.
And then what about the third? What about the 4th?
The littlest, JP, he was our foster child. And so when the triplets were all 4 years old, we received another sweet baby boy, and we really didn't know
as a foster child.
Yeah, as a foster child, and we didn't know if we'd get to adopt him, but we enjoyed him, and it was such a great experience for my children to get to meet his birth mother and see her tears, and to be able to explain to them, like, this is how it was with your birth mothers. Like, this is heartbreaking. This is hard for her, and so they could understand a little bit more of their story.
Sure. And that's wonderful that you can be open with them on that, because my husband and I are parents of 2 adopted infants, not as close together as yours. And we also went through infertility, and we're able to adopt 2 infants who are now in their 40s, and we have 5 grandchildren. But the stories of their birth mothers and what their birth mothers experienced, we were able to house pregnant girls for about 15 years. So half of the mothers that we housed made adoption plans, and our children became very, very pro-adoption because they saw the love of those birth mothers who had made adoption plans, and having your children seeing the love of the birth mothers that were unable to continue parenting their children is such a beautiful thing. I love that about what you're doing, Kimberly. Well, so tell us then, now you founded Springs in the Desert while your children were being adopted, of course, to help others who were suffering with infertility and loss. And then you realized Springs of Love was needed to help more people really be open to fostering and adoption, which was such a beautiful path.
Right, absolutely. Well, Springs in the Desert, really, we wanted to be able to accompany those who were struggling with infertility and to allow them to really know God's love for them, because so many times, people are feeling abandoned or punished by God. So that's why we created Springs in the Desert, and the ministry is really taking off. We're doing retreats all over the country, and
some of them are virtual, right?
Yeah, we do virtual and in person.
That's amazing to me that being able to experience some of this even virtually is so helpful.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And we have a podcast and lots of different opportunities.
That's Springs in the Desert.
Yes,
okay.
springsinthedesert.org.
Springsinthedesert.org.
And then we just started this new kind of a sister organization called Springs of Love. So it's separate because not everybody struggling with infertility is going to be called to adopt.
Sure.
But we really wanted to open it up to all Catholics, to really discern that if they're called to foster and adopt.
And of course, even Catholics who have their own biological children,
Absolutely.
Can be called to foster and adopt as
That's
well.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
That's beautiful. Well, Kimberly, it's just been such a pleasure to meet you, to hear your story. I wish you could see Kimberly as she's talking. It's just the fire of the Holy Spirit in her, and also just her compassion for those who are suffering the way she and her husband did. And then the excitement and joy of being able to help provide healing and help other people realize the doors that God may be opening. So Kimberly, I hope they could hear that in your voice. I could also see it in your face. So it's been a beautiful testimony. And thank you so much for sharing. And we are going to have another program with Kimberly Henkel. You can find it in our archives about other emerging ministries that are really helping with healing in our families, which is so desperately needed. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you for listening to the Family Sanctuary today. And you are listening to St. Gabriel Catholic Radio with archives at stgabrielradio.com under the Family Sanctuary. We're streaming live on St. Gabriel Radio. And our program is broadcast at 4 o'clock every Saturday and 2 o'clock on Sundays. So please join us again to strengthen our families and make them sanctuaries of life as God intends.
Family Sanctuary is a production of listener-supported St. Gabriel Catholic Radio, AM 820. Archives of Family Sanctuary with Peggy Hartshorn are available at stgabrielradio.com.